The rain had just stopped when Arif stepped into the showroom. His shirt was faded, the cuffs slightly frayed from years of wear, and his sandals were caked with the mud of the fields he had worked that very morning. The gleaming glass doors reflected his humble appearance back at him, almost like a cruel reminder that he did not belong in such a polished place. Inside, the air smelled faintly of leather and polish. Sleek cars, shining under soft golden lights, lined the floor like royalty waiting to be chosen. Arif's eyes lingered on a modest model parked in the corner, not the fanciest, not the cheapest either. He had promised himself this moment for years. Not a luxurious car, but something reliable, something that would let him carry his family safely, something that spoke of his small victories in life. But before he could even take a step closer, a laugh rang across the room. "Hey, sir, the service entrance is that way," a young salesman called out, pointing with a smirk toward the back door. "Farmers usually come in there for deliveries." His tone was drenched in mockery, as though Arif was dirt beneath his shoes. Another salesman chuckled, whispering loud enough for Arif to hear, "Maybe he's just here to look at the air conditioning. I bet he's never even sat in a car like this." The word stung, but Arif remained silent. He wasn't a man of quick retorts. He had spent most of his life listening more than speaking, enduring more than complaining. He only smiled faintly, the kind of smile that wasn't joy but a shield, a way to hide the storm inside. "I'd like to know the price of that one," Arif said softly, pointing at the car in the corner. The salesman exchanged a glance with his colleague, barely hiding their amusement. One of them swaggered over, dragging his feet, his voice laced with sarcasm. "That one? Oh, that's not really affordable for everyone, sir. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the used car lot down the road." Arif's hand tightened around the strap of his worn-out bag. Inside were the savings of years, money gathered from early mornings and sleepless nights, from sweat dripping under the harsh sun and calloused palms gripping rough tools. He could afford that car. But at that moment, the car didn't matter. What mattered was the sharp cut of disrespect, the way they had reduced him to nothing because of his clothes, his background, his image. He quietly turned and left. Not a word, not an argument. Just silence. The laughter behind him followed him out like a shadow. On the way home, his mind wandered to the faces of his children. He had promised them a better life, a life where they wouldn't be measured by the soil under their fingernails. But change didn't come from words. Change came from action, from proving wrong those who thought you were small. That night, sitting by the kerosene lamp, Arif opened the old notebook where he recorded every expense and earning. His farm had done well in recent years, he had been clever, investing in modern irrigation, diversifying his crops, even leasing extra land when others laughed at his ambition. His neighbors saw a farmer in old clothes. What they didn't see was the man who quietly built something greater than himself, brick by brick, harvest by harvest. It was in that moment of reflection that an idea took root, an idea bigger than a car, bigger than the mockery he had endured. Why buy a car, when he could buy the dealership? The thought sounded absurd at first, almost laughable. But the more he turned it over in his mind, the clearer it became. Arif had money, significant savings, though he had never flaunted them. He also had patience, discipline, and a network of trusted friends in the agricultural and trading business. What he lacked in polish, he made up for in vision. For weeks, Arif worked quietly. He met with advisors, accountants, and business brokers. He studied how dealerships functioned, the finances behind them, the partnerships with manufacturers. And then, one crisp morning, while the same salesmen were polishing the showroom floor, a black SUV pulled up outside. Out stepped Arif, not in his usual farmer's clothes, but still himself. A clean white kurta, simple sandals, hair neatly combed. He wasn't trying to pretend, he simply wanted to be seen for who he was, without the distraction of mud and dust. This time, the laughter did not come. Instead, confusion rippled across their faces as the manager rushed forward, greeting Arif with a polite bow of the head. Papers were signed in a back office that smelled faintly of coffee and fresh ink. By the end of the day, the humble farmer was no longer just a customer. He was the owner of the dealership. News spread like wildfire. Some refused to believe it at first. Arif? The farmer with the torn shirt? Owning that place? But disbelief gave way to awe when the large sign outside the dealership was updated a month later, Arif Motors. The same salesman who had mocked him now stood nervously in line, awaiting his arrival. He walked through the showroom, his steps calm, his eyes steady. No anger, no arrogance, just the quiet dignity of a man who had endured mockery and turned it into strength. "Sir," one of the salesmen stammered, we didn't know who you were. "We didn't mean." Arif raised a hand, silencing him. "You didn't need to know who I was. You only needed to treat me with respect. Not because I could buy this place, but because every human deserves it." The words hung heavy in the air, sinking deep into their hearts. Under Arif's leadership, the dealership transformed. No longer was it a place where appearances determined worth. Farmers in muddy boots, mechanics in greasy overalls, laborers with worn-out clothes, all were welcomed with warmth and dignity. Arif made sure of it. He knew too well what it felt like to be turned away, to be laughed at, to be invisible. The dealership thrived, not just in sales but in reputation. Customers came from far and wide, drawn by the promise of fairness and respect. And every time Arif saw a farmer step into the showroom with hesitant eyes, he made it his mission to greet them personally, to remind them they belonged here just as much as anyone else. But the story didn't end with success alone. It rippled outward, touching lives beyond the dealership. His children grew up witnessing humility paired with strength, learning that dignity was worth more than wealth. His neighbors saw in him a living reminder that no dream was too big, no background too small. And those salesmen? They stayed. Arif didn't fire them, though many expected he would. Instead, he gave them a chance to grow, to learn from their mistakes. Over time, their arrogance softened, replaced by genuine respect, not just for Arif, but for every customer who walked through the door. Years later, when Arif sat with his grandchildren, they often asked him the secret of his journey. He would smile, eyes twinkling with the wisdom of years, and say, "Never judge a man by his clothes. They cover the body, not the heart. And never let mockery define you. Let it fuel you." The memory of that rainy day never left him, the sting of laughter, the sharp bite of humiliation. But instead of breaking him, it had built him. The very soil that dirted his clothes had given him strength. The very hands they mocked had sown seeds of greatness. And so, the humble farmer who once walked into a dealership and was laughed at, walked out years later as its proud owner. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove himself right, that dignity, resilience, and vision could silence even the loudest laughter. Because in the end, respect isn't something given by others. It's something earned by the way you rise when they try to push you down. And Arif had risen, higher than they ever imagined.